Hi, I'm Becky with Lutheran Bible Translators, serving in Liberia and Sierra Leone, and you're listening to the Lutheran Ladies Lounge podcast from KFUO Radio.
You're listening to the Lutheran Ladies Lounge podcast. I'm Sarah.
I'm Erin.
And I'm Rachel.
We have a kitchen table talk episode today, and this is a special one because this is also bonus content for book club, which was 2 weeks ago. So joining us today for the extended version of book club is Dr. Joel Biermann, professor of systematic theology at Concordia Seminary, St. Louis, and author of our book club book, Day 7 from Concordia Publishing House. Dr. Biermann, welcome back to the Ladies Lounge.
It's good to be with you. Thank you for reading my book. Appreciate it.
We don't often have repeat guests on the Ladies Lounge, so this is kind of fun.
All right. I'm duly honored.
Mm-hmm. Now, I should, in the interest of full disclosure, let everyone know that this was recorded well in advance of this drop date. And as a result, I'm only halfway through this book because it only arrived in my mailbox 3 days ago and it's been busy. But I am halfway through and I'm enjoying it so much. Oh. My friends will know that I don't read a whole lot of books in the, what do you call it, Christian living and spirituality category.
I don't blame you.
This one's piqued my interest and it has not disappointed so far.
Oh, good.
So,
all right. Well, I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, this is labeled as Christian living, spiritual growth. I also do not read many in this category.
I mean, once you've read Dante, it's really hard to get really satisfied with Christian living and spiritual growth.
I won't disagree with you. That's fine. I didn't know I was in that category, Christian living and spiritual growth. Yeah. I'm not fond of that category.
Right there on the back of the book.
Oh, bummer. I didn't realize that.
Oh, sorry. But see,
how about systematic theology? I'll take
I was
that.
just going to say, how would you categorize it?
Yeah.
So
I would categorize it as theology. This is systematic theology, applied theology.
Good luck getting book reviewers to take a look at it. It's not
yeah,
well,
I think
come on.
The categories are probably developed more by the marketing department, is my guess.
Yeah, you think so.
As a former publishing marketer, I can confirm that. So the idea of an author not...
and nobody wants to read it, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's sad.
I'm all about that. Whatever.
It is an evil world.
It is. All messed up.
Rachel, can you explain to us why we're here, though, today? We were very excited to read Day 7 for book club, maybe revisit how we got to that point.
Well, we got to that point mostly because I saw this book in the CPH catalog and thought, ooh, this is a topic that I have personally wrestled with for years.
Really?
For some of the reasons that you highlight in the book that we'll get into in a little bit here. So
okay.
It definitely piqued my interest. And then when I realized, well, for our Reformation read this fall, we just read Kitty My Rib for our summer beach read. And maybe we need to look in a different corner of the Lutheran literary world to satisfy our desire to read something reformational. And so I thought, well, yes, this is the time. Let's do it.
Mm-hmm. All right.
And here we have a book that's all about time.
I even talk about Luther a little bit, so I guess it's reformational.
Oh, look at that.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And we're going to start with the catechism because you start with the catechism. It's a great place to start. I think when we talk about Sabbath, when we bring up Sabbath, the Third Commandment, I think for all of us good catechized Lutherans, frequently comes to the top of the brain, thinking about the Third Commandment, remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy, and the explanation to that commandment, we should fear and love God so that we do not despise preaching and his word, but hold it sacred and gladly hear and learn it. How did an entire book come out of this idea?
Wow, man, you could write a whole bunch of books out of that one idea. One of the things that always amazed me, when I was very young, I ran across a paper my dad had written where he wrote a whole paper on a single word, and now I come to realize that's nothing. I mean, you can take any concept in the Bible and just boom, and you can turn it into multiple books. It's just endless. You just pick anything and just go. So that's not hard to do. And there are things I had to leave out, frankly. This is not exhaustive. This is just me dabbling in the Third Commandment a little bit. But now the Third Commandment, I think, is fascinating. I've been interested in this for quite a while, this whole Sabbath Third Commandment thing. And I'll readily admit, on the face of it, it looks not interesting at all. It's like, oh, yeah, ugh. I know, but the more I've become persuaded it's important. And so you can read the book and see what you think.
You have a special way of like taking a concept that is like, I don't know, this might be interesting. And then you like slowly just kind of blow your mind over the course of however many pages it is. Cause you just like bring up different ideas and, poke into a topic in a way that I just have not thought about before. And full disclosure, on the coffee hour with Andy and me, we have covered this book already, and we'll link all of that in the show notes for this episode. So you get even like bonus content. The stuff that we probably won't cover today even, because as you said, you can talk about this for ages. So it's fun. I'm so happy to just dig into this again from a different angle.
Okay, speaking of digging into it, let's talk more about that Third Commandment, because you are one of the first people who has ever articulated something that has bugged me for years. As I now go through confirmation for the 5th time with my 4th daughter, we are actually literally memorizing the commandments, this month.
Right.
And I had always wondered about Luther's explanation to the Third Commandment, because all of the other commandments, he takes it and he unpacks it. He teases everything out and he makes it more comprehensive and also harder.
Yep.
But the Third Commandment, he doesn't even really touch the subject matter. So, at face value, you're like, that was a dodge. Was it that you had a bad day when you wrote that explanation? Or was it just that you are a typical German workaholic who does not enjoy rest yourself and doesn't want anyone else to enjoy rest either? How can you explain the Third Commandment
and he basically was like, hey, listen to me.
Right. Yeah.
That's what it means.
How could Luther explain the Third Commandment and never once mention the word rest?
Yeah, no, that you asked the absolutely relevant question. This is what got me started in the whole thing. Because it's like, what are you doing, Luther? This is so weird. That you're exactly right. He expands them all. This one he shrinks down. But see, it's hard to say that out loud because this is Luther.
I know.
This is a small catechism kind of like, you don't question it.
Like that. This is the one commandment I can keep. The way he explains it, like
yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Like something's off here.
Well, the full answer is gets a little detailed historical kind of an issue, but I'm convinced that a big part of this, and I get into this in the book, that a big driver in this was his ongoing disagreement with Andreas Karlstadt. And so Karlstadt had been a compatriot with Luther. They'd been working side by side. But then when Luther was hanging out at the Wartburg Castle, translating the New Testament in the early part of the Reformation, after his diet of worms, Karlstadt was running the show in Wittenberg and was going crazy with his reforms, doing iconoclasm, which means clearing out the church of all the images. He was doing communion in both kinds immediately, giving the bread and the wine. He did the liturgy wearing street clothes, which scandalized, people. And he was he got married. He married a young gal in her teens. It was kind of creepy. And it's just all this kind of stuff, bang, 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 like this. And he was also saying that if we're going to be true Christians, we have to keep the whole entire Mosaic law, including Sabbath-keeping. And so for Karlstadt, that meant you can't do any work, none at all, this kind of austere, very severe way of operating. Well, Luther wanted nothing to do with this. And the name they gave to this whole movement was the Sabbatarians, because they were so hung up on the Sabbath keeping. And so Luther wanted nothing to do with this hung up overemphasis on the Sabbath. And so I'm really kind of convinced that in the context of the Reformation, and if Karlstadt was still around, and Karlstadt was a pretty sharp guy and gave Luther a lot of grief. It's writing against Luther actively and interacting with Luther. They had a famous face-to-face conversation, which did not go well. Luther had a bit of if you were on his wrong side, it was not a good place to be. And Karlstadt was clearly on Luther's wrong side. So I think that Luther, frankly, just wanted to give these guys absolutely no room to move at all.
Gotcha.
And so for him, it's like, we're not talking about Sabbath. What does Sabbath boil down to? It boils down to our relationship with God. And how's our relationship with God happen? It happens by hearing the word. There. That's enough. And I also think part of it ties into the fact that in Hebrews, where Sabbath is talked about in chapters 4 and 5, it has a strong connection there, the writer to Hebrews, between the Sabbath that God has for us and God's word. In fact, that famous verse we all love about God's word is a sharp sword, cutting down to joints and marrow, that's Hebrews chapter 5. Or 4. And so that's right in there in that whole context. So for Luther, it made sense. What's Sabbath? We're not going to play the Sabbatarian weird Jewish game. We're not going to worry about not working. We're not going to go there route. What we're going to just focus on is what really matters, which is our relationship with God through hearing the word. So I think that's what's going on there. It's just that simple.
Yeah, that makes good sense. And you mentioned Hebrews.
Yeah.
I would be interested to hear your take on how we understand the term Sabbath when we look at the entire scriptures. Most of the commandments, when Moses says, you shall not commit adultery, and Jesus says, you shall not commit adultery, and Paul says, you shall not commit adultery. Like it's remarkably consistent what that commandment means and how it applies throughout all of Scripture. But Sabbath is different. It seems to almost seems to have a shifting meaning. But what's going on there?
Yeah, well, I think the key is getting down to the bottom of what Sabbath really means. And that's where we need to start. Because most of us hear Sabbath and we immediately think of Sunday can't work.
Yeah.
And that's how most of Christendom hears it. And that's what everybody thinks. Or then they say, well, it just means you've got to have some time to rest and and the body needs to rest. And Luther even kind of go that route in the large catechism. And there's that aspect of it. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to say, let's follow Luther's modus operandi, the way he operates in all the other commandments, which is what he does is he cuts down through and says, what is the natural law, or I prefer the creational law, fundamental truth at work underneath this commandment? Because Luther's assessment of the Old Testament is it's all thrown out because Christ fulfills it all. The only thing we're bound to keep is what's creational law. And so for him, the commandments express the kind of fundamentals of this inbuilt creational law. So the fact that the third command's included means there's something profound going on here that's not just superficial. And so I would argue that the third commandment's not just part of the ceremonial law or the Mosaic law only for Israel, but it's expressing a fundamental truth of the relationship that should exist between creature and creator and creature and fellow creatures. Because what's Sabbath all about? It's grounded in day 7. And what does God do on day 7? Day 7, God rests from his creation. And the critical thing to remember here is God's not resting because he's tired.
Yes.
And
Right.
God's not resting because he needs to, catch up and, rejuvenate. He needs to be recreated. He's God. He's resting to set an example for us. And what he does on day 7 is he has a celebration. He celebrates with Adam and Eve the creation, delights in it, rejoices in it, simply enjoys the goodness of the creation. And that, I would argue, is the very heart and core of what Sabbath is. And so when Moses has given the commandment about keeping the Sabbath, attached to that is make sure that this day is different because I want you to remember this 7th day routine. And so we're going to make it different by not letting you work and by making you have to celebrate because it's going to be a festival day. It's built in. And that becomes kind of the core thing. But the heart of it is not don't work. The heart of it is remember God. Remember the creation. Remember what God has done for you. Delight in it. Enjoy it. Celebrate it. That becomes the very heart and core of everything. So then what you have in the New Testament is Jesus coming into a world where Sabbath had been really messed up because the people of Israel had morphed into the Second Temple Judaism. And now you've got all these rules about Sabbath keeping, and all they're worried about is the outward form of don't do any work. What constitutes work? And they're missing the whole core. And so then Jesus blows everybody away by coming and just basically saying, we're going to rethink what Sabbath is. And here's the real surprise. And there's just so much to talk about here, but the real surprise is how prevalent Sabbath actually is in the Gospels.
Yeah.
And we kind of miss this. But Jesus is very deliberate about his interactions with Sabbath. And you notice how often it comes up. On a Sabbath, he did this, and on a Sabbath, he does this. And what's he doing? Teaching in the synagogue and healing and restoring and putting things back and pushing against. So the Sabbath is not just a matter of, look, I'm in charge, I can do what you want because I'm God, but it's a matter of, I'm coming to actually fulfill what Sabbath is, which is God and creation in sync the right way. And in Nazareth, when he announces the beginning of his ministry, what does he say? He reads the text from Isaiah, which is about the Jubilee, Sabbath of Sabbaths, the ultimate Sabbath. And then he announces, today fulfilled in your hearing. Wow. Huge, crazy, big claim. And he's making it right there. So Jesus is Sabbath incarnate. He is the fulfillment of Sabbath. And so there is a continuity. You ask, where's the continuity? It's absolutely there. It's all the way through. It's just that Sabbath gets misunderstood and gets buried underneath all this stuff. And we don't realize the fullness of what it all is.
Yeah, I love the image you use actually in the work chapter about how satisfying it is to mow the lawn. And
hey,
how
he's got opinions about mowing the lawn.
I can tell. I can tell. But as I think to that wonderful image, since I also mow the lawn quite a lot at our house,
Okay.
of what it's like when you have just, and it's Virginia, it might be a 90-degree day, you have just done the lawn and it looks so crisp and beautiful, and you just got to go sit on the porch with a cold Gatorade and admire it. And that for me feels almost like you're getting that's sort of almost at the heart of your definition of what it means to understand Sabbath.
It is.
Am I there?
No, you are exactly there.
Okay.
Because you see, and this is the kind of the critical thing. Sabbath is not the antithesis of work. And Sabbath does not equate with doing nothing or idleness. Sabbath equates with being in tune and delighting in what God is using you to do. And so one of my titles I was toying with for the book was Sabbath Work. And, it sounds oxymoronic. And yet that's the very idea, is that we work in light of Sabbath and we celebrate Sabbath in light of our human being, which is to work. It's part of what we're built for. And that satisfaction that we get and that delight in knowing we've done our job well, and we have served the creation well, and everything it's in sync. And you're right. You look out at those stripes, and it's just a delightful thing.
You got to just sit and soak it all in for a minute.
That's right. That's right. Gatorade, whatever you choose, go for it.
After mowing in 90-degree weather, there's always something with electrolytes involved.
That's a good idea.
Okay, let's talk about work a little bit more, because a lot of people who were asking questions, a lot of it revolves around this idea that Sabbath equals rest. Sabbath equals not working, sitting on the couch. How do we understand what work actually is? Because you mentioned that we're made to work.
Yeah.
Can we dive into that a little bit more so we can really understand how that Sabbath and work together?
Yeah. Yeah, I devoted a whole chapter in the book to work, which is, you're talking about Sabbath. Why are you talking about work?
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And I think we don't get work right. We tend to mess up how we think about work. One of the guys I've benefited a lot from is a guy named Joseph Pieper. So I reference him in the book, and because I've gained a lot from him. He points out that we live in a culture, and he was writing mid-20th century, of what he termed total work. That work basically defines and overwhelms us, and most of us recognize this is not good. And you get this kind of pushback, there's work, we're workaholics, we don't even take vacation days. Well, it's true. And so then we think, well, the solution is I got to find more time to rest. That's not really the problem. The problem is not your work-rest balance. The problem is you've got the wrong concept of work. That you're thinking about work as what defines you. You're thinking about work as your reason for being. It's a part of, but it's not the only. And so Pieper argues that, no, your reason for being is not to work. And he's very Aristotelian. Aristotle thought work was merely to survive. And you work because you have to. And work is always a demeaning, grudging, hard thing. But the best thing is to be freed from work so you can do true leisure. Now, leisure for Aristotle does not mean kicking back with a Gatorade and doing nothing. Leisure for Aristotle really means contemplation. And the word in Greek is scholia, which we get the word school and scholar from. And so the idea here is that contemplation means thinking about what is, thinking about what matters, being fully human, using your rational capacity, delighting in things, thinking about things, and understanding things for the sheer joy of it. That's the kind of right idea. Now, I think Pieper goes crazy a little bit another way because he dismisses work. Because if you read the Bible, it becomes clear that Adam is created to work and Eve is created to work. This is part of the creation account. God creates Adam and Eve, puts them in the garden to do what? Take care of it. That's what we're here for. But we're also here to be living in tune with God. That's where the day 7 kicks in, because we're supposed to have a relationship and interaction. So the key to really understanding how to keep the third commandment about day 7 is not making sure you don't work too much or you have the right balance. The key is, are you living with a right relationship with God, which includes your work life and includes your time to be able to enjoy and delight and includes your relationship with Him? So are you making sure that you are cultivating that relationship by hearing His word? So Luther's right. It is about the word. And you're delighting in what He gives you through His word proclaimed. And you're spending time with your relationships and you're getting your things done. So the balance comes into play by not trying to figure out how to balance work and play or work and rest, but by simply seeing yourself as the recipient of God's gifts and of God's direction for your life.
So when our work is such that, I don't know, like there's some work that is satisfying because you can tell when it's done.
Yeah.
And there's other work that is still important, but it's less satisfying because it's less clear that you've actually done it or accomplished it.
Yeah.
How does that type of work, the harder, the more nebulous and ambiguous results work, how does that play into the idea of Sabbath? As far as are we contemplating our work, or are we supposed to be contemplating God's work as far as Sabbath goes? Is that part of part of the idea? Is no, you're not actually supposed to be looking at the lawn that you mowed and taking satisfaction in it, and instead be oh, look at this thing that God has done.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I think you're right. You're right. You're asking a very good question. So the first part I'll say is, not all work is pleasant, not all work is delightful, and sometimes it just doesn't end. It keeps going, and it's there again, and that's hard. And that's part of the curse. The wages of sin is that work is painful, not always pleasant, and while we're built for work, it also is what kills us, wears us out, exhausts us, depletes us, and so. Work is a multifaceted, complicated thing. And some work is easier, some work is more delightful, but it's not all fun and it's not all pleasant. And yet, even that unpleasant stuff is part of what it means to be creature. And being creature means seeing God in the right way and receiving from Him. And so you're bringing the idea back in of seeing God's work on my life. Yeah, that's what drives the Sabbath to make it a truly Sabbath experience. It has to include God. There is no Sabbath apart from God as the center of it. And so we're learning to see His hand in all that we do. But see, when I'm delighting in the work that I have been able to accomplish or that others have done and delighting in their work, I'm recognizing also that God has given me this work and given me the ability to fulfill and do it. And so it works together. They're not contradictory.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, how does vocation play into all of this? Because when we talk about work, vocation always ends up coming up because that's tied into work, but it's also tied into relationships and how we spend hopefully the majority of our time fulfilling all of those different vocations. How does that play into work and Sabbath and rest and play and all of that?
Yeah. And vocation is a great teaching that is, I would argue, pretty central to Lutheranism. It's not really an add-on. It's a central thing. When Luther was kind of working through the early part of the Reformation, we know he had his great discovery of the gospel, and he has his tower experience and puts the gospel to center. But hand in hand with that was his understanding that God has given us the gospel and redeemed us, not just so that we can go to heaven someday, but so that we can live the kind of lives He wants us to live now. And this is dominant in Luther's talk. And so one of the reasons he was so angry about the monastic system and then the people running away from the world to join the monastery is not that they're trying to earn their way to God's favor. The reason he was so angry about it was because they were neglecting the work God had given them to do in the world. And they were forsaking the vocations God had given them. So vocation is a very central aspect of what it means to be a Lutheran, because God frees us and redeems us in Christ to send us back into the creation to do what he created us to do. And that's where we serve. So the vocations then become the peculiar, specific areas that each of us have to accomplish for the sake of those around us. And those start primarily in families, because we're all born into a family, and that's where vocations begin. And those are some of the most demanding of our vocations and some of the oftentimes most taxing of our vocations. But that's where vocation comes into play. So we work not always just by choice, but sometimes by default. And some of the most important vocations are the ones we didn't go to school for, or we didn't study for, or apply for. They just happen to us. Especially, marriage, parenting. How do these things happen? Before you know it, you got all these vocations, and what's going on? When did I say yes to this? Well, it all happens the way God intends it.
Well, this question about vocation leads in pretty nicely to one of our Facebook group questions that I want to raise. As a pastor, you understand the dilemma that a lot of people in my position as stay-at-home moms also experience. Even if you want to rest, maybe it's not possible, especially on Sunday. Our group member writes, many women who are raising families struggle to find time for leisure. How can women be encouraged to embrace their God-given gifts and embrace their purpose with the perspective of the Sabbath as a gift, not a burden? What does this look like in a God-given family structure? For many women, and I can corroborate this, the experience of leisure comes at a cost, and it is easier to forego leisure rather than rest and let everything pile up or deal with the mental load of delegating tasks to others. It's just easier to work 24/7 than it is to take a few hours off and then have to catch up. If I take 2 days off, I'll catch up in 2 weeks. So how do we accept this idea of Sabbath, but also this idea of rest, which, as you're saying, are not necessarily completely synonymous?
Right.
When we have vocations that never let up.
Right. And so this is part of the thing. You see, if the person like that hears this, you need to rest, it's like, oh, one more burden, one more thing I'm not doing.
Yeah.
And then the guilt kicks in because I'm not spending the time the way I should. And so, this is not, see, this is why I hate the fact that my book is on the the Christian living kind of thing. Because I know it has nothing to do with that. It's a marketing ploy. I totally understand that. But you see, I'm not offering self tips or here's your ticket, here's what you need to do. Do this for your Sunday schedule, do this for your Saturday. And no, you need to sort this stuff out. But see, it really becomes kind of it's an attitudinal thing. That's what I want to try to get at here.
Okay.
Sabbath is a way of looking at life. That's what I'm really getting at. Sabbath is how you see all of your life. And so instead of looking at your thing, well, right now in life, being a mom is just exhausting. That's all I've got to do. I've got no time for anything else. Someday, maybe I'll have time. No, you can start living a Sabbath way even now, even though you're doing 24/7 on the mom job. I get that. It doesn't stop. You are that 24/7. And so the key is to learn to see your service to your family in a Sabbath sort of way and find leisure even in the midst of what you're doing. And so this is where you take the kids for a walk around the block and, on a 90-degree day, you wait until the evening or whatever, or early in the morning, and you just delight in some little part of God's creation and, rejoice in the sunrise and teach the kids to delight in these small things. Or you get them their ice cold glass of water when you drink your Gatorade and they drink their ice cold water, and you talk about the joy of simply the gifts that God has given us. And so in other words, what I'm suggesting is you introduce Sabbath living into the routine of the life you have now. And you begin to see your work, even the burdensome and the taxing part, as this is part of what it means to be human. I'm human because God has chosen that for me. He's given me these vocations. These are good, God-pleasing vocations. When I do them well, this is pleasing to God. I'm living in a Sabbath way right now, even though I'm doing the dishes and folding the clothes and cleaning the house and picking up kids. I'm doing this in a Sabbath way. And then it's not a matter of the turn it off, oh, not my me time. Maybe you don't ever get me time, but you can still live with Sabbath and even in a leisure way, which is really weird sounding, even in the midst of doing that work, as you begin to cultivate it and seek it out and find it, and you can begin to discover that. I make a reference in the book to a short story by Wendell Berry that I love a lot. About he's describing the life of a friend of mine is the name of the short story, and it's about a guy who's harvesting tobacco, working hard, and he takes these little moments where he has a break where he cuts open a watermelon and eats it, and it's in the middle of his work he takes these little breaks, but it's like that's his break, that's his leisure, and then he has to work so hard. But it's not. It's like the whole event of his workday is in tune. He's in sync with his community. He's in sync with God who's given him this work. He's in sync with the tobacco field that he's harvesting and the melons he's eating. The whole thing is kind of this celebration of, I'm here doing what I'm doing in creation as a part of the creation. And so his work is hard and taxing, and yet it's a delight because it comes from God, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
And so you see, that's what I'm trying to really get at with day 7 is it's how you look at your life now, not I've got to add these things to my life so that. No, it's learn to see what you've got right now through God's perspective and through a day 7 lens, and it starts to look different.
Mhm. Yeah, I can see that. There's one other reader question I never can break out of the publishing mold. There's one other question from one of our listeners that I think is a really intriguing one for me, and so I share it with you. Speaking of leisure, and I guess probably the background for this question is the fact that in our society, leisure usually means grabbing your phone and plopping down on the couch and watching an ungodly amount of some questionable content. That seems to be our American way. And so she asked,
binge watching. Yeah.
right.
Instagram Reels. Hey.
How should faith and scripture inform our choice of leisure activities, TV show choices while we're resting when so much content is questionable at best?
Oh yeah, I mean that's not a hard one, and you guys know the answer to that. Everybody knows the answer; they just don't want to hear it. Is that you should be monitoring what you're doing through a lens of, is this following Christ? Is this enabling me to do my vocations better? Am I really doing contemplation, or am I really engaging in acedia? And acedia is one of the 7 deadly sins. What we usually translate as sloth, but what acedia really is getting at is the kind of failure to live in leisure. And when you're just doing stuff that's a diversion away from what God would have you do, you're not doing leisure. You're doing acedia. You're basically doing the opposite. And so I think it's a fair question. I'm not saying that all TV content's evil, or that you can't, just enjoy scrolling through your phone and looking at whatever interesting content pops up once in a while. But these things can become soul-stealing, mind-numbing, and really enemies of living in tune in a day 7 way. No doubt about that.
Mm-hmm. I just have to point out that the introduction to your book, you literally say, this book is not a self-help book. So there you go.
Oh, thank you. I tried.
Talking about work, and we brought up play. Let's talk about play. I think in our culture, that the total work culture, where we see work as like the thing that we have to do all the time. And I think it's easy to feel guilty for just like having fun and delighting. Yeah. I love that word. It's so easy to just feel like play isn't important, or it's kind of like the thing you do when you happen to have enough time on the weekend, maybe to like have fun with something. But what is play? Why is play important for Christians in God's creation?
Yeah. Play is really fascinating because I think the way I would look at play is I do not equate it with leisure. I think leisure is a more of a contemplative, deliberate, delighting with God. Pieper makes the argument, and I would argue with him here, that the pinnacle of leisure is worship. So in worship, where we're with God, receiving from God, giving him praise, we're doing it with others. We're not doing it alone. We're doing it in a Sunday morning divine service. That's leisure. That's what it looks like. So, and play is an aspect of that, because the difference between work and play is that work is always purposeful with an end in mind. There's something that you see that you've accomplished. It's purposeful. Play is not. And leisure has an element of purpose in it, but leisure is far closer to play than it is to work. obviously, because play is purposeless. And that sounds like it's worthless. And that's only sounds that way because we so value purposeful work. And so we are a work-driven culture. We always evaluate everything by what we accomplished. And we even justify play by it enabled me to do this, or I played so that I could do that. I did my recreation so that I could be stronger. We justify it all. But the real essence of play is it's purposeless. It is its own thing. And that's why play matters. And play really, and there's a really fascinating book written back in the 20th century called Homo Ludens, and about man the player, and that all of life is kind of seen through play, and it's all games. And that's a fascinating argument. He's probably more right than wrong. But the sense of play, we think it's frivolous, worthless, childish, but the whole point is play is what kind of gives us the ability to simply delight in being alive. And it is its own justification. And see, this is where you have a leg up with kids, because you can play. The key is getting them past chutes and ladders into something that matters, like euchre or something that you can think. And so it takes a while.
Thank you, sir.
You must be a Michigander if you reference euchre.
I am. When I taught my kids how to play euchre early on, because it was so much more engaging than memory games. And but
As
whatever.
is good, right, and proper.
Do we?
Yeah, we struggle with that.
Like, do we see any examples of Jesus playing or God playing?
Nothing specifically recorded. You're right. That's does he laugh? I think so.
Yeah.
And does he play? In my vision, he absolutely does. Different Jesus movies portray him differently. They've gotten a lot better at making him more human and being able to simply delight in things. I read Jesus and I read Paul both having a sense of humor and being playful, and that's how I read it. Some people think that's sacrilegious, but I don't think so. I think it's the right way to read stuff. But it's hard to say definitively, look, this is what's going on here. But sometimes it seems pretty, some of his, like a camel going through the eye of a needle. Well, that's pretty funny if you think about it. And so I think there's that element there.
Well, and the miracle of the temple tax in the fish's mouth. I mean, that could be
That's
a super
fair.
serious, snarky thing, or it could be halfway to being a joke.
No, yeah, I think that's fair. That you can make a pretty good case for that one. I think you're right about that. I'd agree with that.
You say this is not a self-help book, and yet
I claim that. I'm fighting for that.
and yet you also claim that this book contains the meaning of life.
Yeah, I do make that claim.
Could you? That is a very bold claim.
Yeah, I know it. I know. I recognize that.
Could you explain how this understanding of the Third Commandment actually holds the secret to the meaning of life?
Yeah, and if you take everything we've been talking about, it is a bold claim, and I admit that in the introduction, that I am making kind of an audacious claim that this is what life is all about. But I really believe that's the case, and I believe that when we learn to see ourselves as creatures who are the recipients of God's grace, that's the first big move. And until you start there, you always wonder what you're here for, what the point of life. And the big existential questions, what does it mean to be? Why is there something rather than nothing? What's the point of my life? Why do I exist? What's the meaning of life? Everybody needs to know these things. What's stunning to me is how few people in the 21st century have good answers to those questions. And I'm talking anybody. That you encounter. They just don't have answers. And if you after you ask those kinds of questions, they equivocate and get all weird about it because they don't know what to say. And they just get all weirded out about it. But you see, to know those answers and have solid answers is really significant. Well, God gives us those answers. And learning to see ourselves as the recipients of his grace is the big answer. And then you turn around with, so what am I here for? To die and go to heaven and live and look at God forever? No, I'm here to be the creature God made me to be, which starts now. And so now life becomes really purposeful. So taking care of a spouse, that's important. Raising kids, that's important. Being kind to my neighbor, that matters. Doing the job God's given me, an accountant, a teacher, a secretary, an Uber driver, doing that well and serving those people around me, this matters. And now, you see, all those things become purposeful and significant, not because it's such important things in all the eyes of the world, but because it's what God has given me to do. And that's what I'm here for. It's my reason for being. And it settles so many things. Just what's it mean to be alive? Why does it matter? What's my purpose? What's my telos? God's got answers to all of those big, huge existential questions. So it is the meaning of life. And it really comes down to, this is what you're here for. Get busy and go do it.
Mm-hmm.
I have to say, it feels like when you say that, and I haven't worked my way through the book yet, so maybe you address it, but it feels like you're saying that the reason for your life is to do this work, and that is Sabbath. And so now it's like, that's the whole, it's too broad. Now everything is Sabbath. It's no longer Sabbath day. Now it's like your life is Sabbath. Remember
Well,
it.
in a sense,
And holy.
that's kind of, and you're right, Aaron. And I'm gonna, and people can make that critique, and I guess I'll have to live with that one because, no, seriously, I think the whole point is when Christ comes, and through the New Testament, Sabbath starts as a central thing, but then it kind of just dribbles away. And the last time Sabbath gets mentioned after the Gospels, it's only a couple of times. One time in Colossians, where Paul is dismissing it, and then the Hebrews. And in Hebrews, once it's done, it's kind of done. And the point is, the last thing that Hebrews says is, a Sabbath rest remains. So there's the fulfillment is yet to come, which I would contend is that eschatological fulfillment when Christ returns, and now everything is fully Sabbath now, but we're getting the foretaste now. We sing this in the liturgy, a foretaste of the feast to come. So we're living with that foretaste. Yes, it happens on Sunday in divine service. Yes, it happens when I delight in a sunset. Yes, it happens when my kids, we can all sit around the table together and tell jokes and have a fun, family time. Those are little Sabbath moments along the way, little moments of leisure along the way. But all of life, if it's being lived rightly, is living in that Sabbath reality all the time. Setting aside times to make sure it happens, that's important. But you see, when it becomes an obsession that, Sunday's coming, this is the day I've got to do it, boom, 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 because it's Sunday, I think you're kind of missing the whole point.
Okay.
And you're creating more rules that undoes it. So in a sense, I'll own that criticism because it's kind of the whole point. I do want to have, instead of, 6 days this, now this one. That rhythm is going to be there anyway. We are rhythmic people by nature. We function with the rhythm of the day, with the rhythm of the week and the month, the year. We have these cyclical rhythms that God has built in as part of our creaturely life. They're going to be there. Living them in a way that is self-aware and God-aware is kind of the point I'm trying to get across.
Okay.
So if every day is Sabbath, or if all of life is Sabbath, which also
lived
includes
in the
work,
Sabbath reality.
In the Sabbath reality.
Yeah.
What are we supposed to do with Sundays?
Yeah. Well, Sundays or Saturdays, if you want to be a Sabbatarian.
True. There are some folks out there.
That is the true Sabbath.
I remember when I was a teenager sleeping over at my Mormon cousin's house, midnight, she turned off the radio because it was Sunday and we don't listen to the radio on Sunday. Obviously, we as Lutherans have a much more grace-infused view of what the Lord's Day is for, whether that is Sunday or Saturday, and that's way above my pay grade. But what do we do with Sunday?
Yeah, well, Sunday, I would say the point of having this kind of weekly routine is it's good. Just like we know what Mondays are. We know what Wednesdays are like. We know what Fridays are like. We have this weekly routine. And what is interesting, too, is this very idea of the week and the 7-day week has no astronomical grounding, and there's nothing to ground it in besides the day 7 Sabbath. It's really interesting because the month, you got the whole lunar cycle, okay? And a year, you got the whole solar cycle. But a week, and even a day, 24 hours, that's obvious. But a week, what's so magical about 7? And the answer is, it's the Sabbath God is wired into us. It's just there. And so it just works. And even in the French Revolution, they toyed with trying to do a 10-day week. And it didn't work. Yeah. And so this idea of the Sabbath, I think, is kind of just wired into us. And so that means that Sunday, it's good to take a day, as Luther points out, and as the whole kind of commandment reminds us, it's good to make sure you're setting this time aside to specifically worship God, receive his gifts, be with God's people. So divine service, that's the center. Go to church, pay attention. That still holds. And receive the gifts that God gave you and be there with God's people. Stay for Bible class, for crying out loud. One of my huge complaints about Lutheran Christians is this: go to church and go home. Give me a break.
Brunch. Brunch is it's brunch.
Well, do it there at church. You see, we should be living our lives around our fellowship together. The congregations that are starting to have, monthly potlucks or even bi-weekly or even weekly potlucks, this is spot on. This is where we need to go. And the culture is making this more and more of a demand of us. We need to be doing this together, deliberately living our lives together. So Sunday should be a day of delighting in God's creation and God's gifts. And so you go to church, go to Sunday school, hang out, eat a donut or two, maybe have brunch with friends, or have a potluck at church. That's awesome. And then in the afternoon, go do something. Family walk, mow the lawn, plant some flowers. You're working. You're missing the whole point. You're living in sync with God. You're delighting in the creation. It can feel different than the other days, but maybe you're getting some work done that you didn't get done. That's all right. I don't think you're sinning. You're not doing anything wrong. You want to listen to the radio? Go for it. And, so play a baseball game. It's fine. Delight and game playing and just kind of doing things that are out of the ordinary are very good practices. That's what you should be doing. Have a game day with some friends. That's a great Sabbath thing to do.
Thank you. That is very reassuring because I have trouble sitting still. And it was probably within the last year that I was feeling bad about doing so many chores on Sunday. And then I sort of made a deal with myself. I said, on Sunday, you don't do anything you don't want to do. Okay. You don't make yourself, at least me, I don't make myself do a chore that just because I feel like I have to. But if I feel like I would like more than anything else to clean out that cupboard right now, guess what I'm going to do? And then it becomes more like play.
No, absolutely. You're getting the right idea, I would say. This is exactly what I'm trying to get at. Yep.
Okay, good. Because that's much more fun.
I think so. And see, this is the anti-Karlstadt. Karlstadt actually said, Sabbath should be an austere day. It's very serious, where you remember what a great sinner you are and what a great gracious God you have. Okay, that's part of it. But he envisions a Sabbath a lot like Laura Ingalls Wilder complains about.
Yes.
If you read the Little House books, you know how much Laura hated Sundays. Hated them, because Pa made two girls sit there and with their Bibles on their laps, and that's all they could do. They couldn't move off the chair. And she would look out the door and long to be out there running in the fields. Pa screwed it all up. He destroyed Sabbath for her. He undid the joy of what Sabbath should be and was doing the antithesis of Sabbath because of his stupid rules.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just thinking a little bit more on like the whole play and does God play? And I not necessarily, maybe it's harder to see any examples of that, but like he made it so animals play.
Right.
Like, so we have like evidence. It's like children can't help but play. This is like their vocation is to play. And parents play. Anyway, he baked it in a lot of different places, which makes me think he does actually play, because why would he put it so much in, throughout his creation if he didn't actually think it was pretty good?
I agree. Peter Berger, a sociologist from the 20th century, was quoting the book on Homo Ludens, but he points out that play has this remarkable way of taking us outside of ordinary time. And so that when you're playing, it doesn't matter that it's 3:00. What matters is that it's the 8th inning. Okay. Or when you're playing, it doesn't matter, what the rules ordinarily say about how people interact. What matters is that in password, you can't give more than one word clue and you've got to follow the rules. And so the rules and the time are different when we're playing. And that takes us outside of ordinary time and puts us kind of in touch with eternity and with the reality that there's something greater than our ordinary lives. And it seems like it's a lesser than ordinary lives, but in a sense, that's where the truer reality comes through in those times of play. I think so. In other words, you don't trivialize it. It might seem trivial, but it's not. It's actually an important part of life.
Yeah.
So we talked already about work and Sabbath before the fall, and I love how you bring up in the book that, and this isn't explicit, but it's perfectly obvious that God set Adam to work before he sinned. So we know work is good. But I loved, and I'd never seen this insight before, that God declares the first Sabbath the morning after Adam has been created, before he's had a chance to put in a full work week.
Right.
He starts with Sabbath.
Right.
And I love that. So we see all of this work and Sabbath stuff starting in the beginning, but you also say it looks forward to the end, to our teleology, our eschatology. I think a lot of people imagine that heaven, once we get there, or after the resurrection, when all things are new, that we will have no more work anymore. Just sit around and
Endless vacation.
Yes.
Terrible, honestly.
And I will say, I really want the new heavens and the new earth, but I think I already said I have trouble sitting still. How do you see this rhythm that is built into creation extending out into eternity?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the rhythm is so fascinating because, like as you pointed out, that Adam's created and Eve, they're both created there together on day 6. And on day 7, they're with God celebrating the first Sabbath. And they haven't done a stitch of work. On day 6, all they're doing is orientation day. They haven't done anything worthwhile. And so on day 7, they're already resting. But see, the rest is not because they're worn out. It's because they're living in tune. And that's kind of the whole point. It's not to recuperate so I can get back to work. That's kind of the point. We're here to live in tune and to delight. And then it was pointed out to me that the Hebrew way of counting the day begins when? At night. There was evening, there was morning, evening, morning. The Hebrew day begins at sunset. And so you begin by sleeping, and then you get up and do your work. So you begin by receiving, and then you deliver instead of the other way around. So even the rhythm of the day starts with the evening, and so it begins with the reception, and then you go give. And so the implications of this are profound when we think that we're created by God to live in this rhythm, and we're created by God to work. So if I, as a human, am built to work in the creation, when I am fully human, all that God created me to be at the resurrection, what will I imagine myself doing? And I don't think it means sitting around and being idle for eternity. I think it means doing what God created me to do, which is to be busy working in his creation. So that's how I envision this. And I see creation, eternity, the new heavens and new earth being a place where we're actively working, taking care of the creation, taking care of the garden, taking care of each other, enjoying each other, working together. It's fun to think about.
Yeah. I've just now had pop into my brain the scene in Revelation with the saints and martyrs asking the Lord how long, and he tells them to wait a little longer. That this, somehow they are just waiting, and their joy is not yet as complete as it can be.
That's right.
And so now I'm wondering, what are they waiting for?
Well, what they're waiting for is the day of resurrection, when they get their bodies back, and that they're fully all that God created them to be, and there's not just anticipating anymore, but they have the full gift now. And so on the day of resurrection, now the waiting is over, and now the party really gets going. So they're enjoying the hors d'oeuvres right now, and they're having the pre-banquet kind of festivities, but it all kicks in full blast at the day of resurrection.
Yeah.
The banquet's great, but then the work gets going too, and it's fun.
I appreciate the discussion about leisure and delighting, and especially delighting in the company of other people. You talk about festivals and just having joy and delight in other people. And since I read this book several months ago for the coffee hour, that shifted my mindset about delighting in the company of other people. Because sometimes millennials are like, oh, I got to schedule this date on the calendar with my friend. And it ends up being like 6 months down the road because nobody can find time in calendars anymore. But reading this and just listening to you talk about leisure and delighting in the company of people, that kind of shifted in my brain that it's important to take time to delight in the company of other people. And so making that time a priority, even if that means setting aside chores in my house. Like I come home to a dirty house, but I spent the day with my friend and we delighted in each other's company. Like that is a worthy thing. It's not a waste of time. It's not like some chore that I have to put on, not that my friends are chores, but it's not some like difficult thing that we're, struggling to find time. It's like that actually is a priority in my life now.
Guilty pleasure.
Yeah, right.
It's not.
It's not a guilty pleasure.
Yeah.
It's a priority to delight in each other's company because that's just part of who we are.
Exactly. You're exactly right. And so learning to see, and it's like having a game night with a friend is not an add-on when it fits, but it should actually be a priority. I need to make time for this. Same with family events and family things. Making a family time together is not just an add-on, it becomes essential. And not just because we're going to get a lot of formation happening here, a lot of educational time, we turn everything into a teaching moment. No, we can just delight and enjoy. And that's fun in itself, and just have fun with it. And so I love that you're seeing that and recognizing the priority that needs to be given to making that time there. My latest interest, what I'm really kind of thinking about now, is really zeroing in on the aspect of friendship and the role that friendship plays in that life we have together, forming us into what God would have us to be as His creatures, the role of virtue. There's a tight relationship there that I'm giving some more thought to now as well.
And it all ties in, as we're talking about vocations are centered around people.
Yeah.
That so much of the work we put this divide between people time and work time. But in reality, there's so much overlap there that
That's
when
right.
you invest your life and your time in people, in relationships, that is very meaningful work, even if it's just going out to lunch with a friend.
That's right.
And so much of the work we do is meant to facilitate that, not to take us away from that.
That's right. That's right. And see, this is where you, even in working together, and teaching your kids, the chores they have and the chores you do together, and tackling a task together. That's part of it. And even work we do in the corporal world, a lot of it we do it in teams and in groups, and that's part of what makes it a good, positive thing. That's part of where the vocation kicks in.
Although when you said everything a teaching moment, my little homeschool mom heart just sort of like cringed.
Yeah, I can imagine.
We play games. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it's not always a teaching moment. Sometimes it's just moments.
Thank you for that very helpful reminder.
All right.
That's so hard to unlearn, though. We're like so wired to have a purpose in like every single moment. Now I'm trying to think about when I like actually play, and it's hard to think of a time that I just like play for no reason other than like scrolling my phone, but I don't know that counts. I feel a little weird counting.
It's when you're singing.
I think you should feel weird.
That's when you play. It's all your choirs that you're in. That is your playtime.
Yeah, but see, like there's a point to that because we have a concert, so we have to sing to prep. I don't know.
But is
Maybe
the concert the point, or is the concert the excuse?
It's true. I do love singing quite a bit. I don't know.
So I think one question, and this was another listener question, that a lot of parents and families struggle with, are there bad ways to use Sabbath time? This listener references specifically, she says, I'd also love to hear his take on the leisure choices of putting our kids in hobbies or sports that demand lots and lots of time. And I would add, including time perhaps on Sundays. How do we regulate that, which should be a leisure play activity and yet sometimes can overstep its bounds?
Yeah, we mess play up a lot. And so in kids' sports, and I don't know how it is around the country, but I suspect it's pretty the same, is kids' sports have just become this kind of whole cottage industry, and it's just a consuming bizarre kind of a thing. And especially start getting into not just even varsity sports, but like these select teams, and where you have, entire weekends devoted to hockey or softball or to, whatever, volleyball. And these are on a regular basis through, and just consuming. It's a year-round thing. Well, that's not leisure. That's not even playing anymore. You're turning it, you have instrumentalized it, and it's becoming something that's onerous, and it's becoming a burden. And it is, I would argue, many times kind of antithetical to actually living a life in a Sabbath way, because it's interfering. If you're so busy with all these enrichment activities, well, they're not enrichments anymore. They're actually taking away from your life. And so the simplifying, and, getting rid of junk that you don't need to have, Yeah. And man, I know this is exceedingly hard for parents to do because they feel like they're cheating their kids and their kids are missing out and they're not being good parents because they're not allowing their kids to develop all these things fully. But that's where the parent needs to be really wise and ask the question, what is it that I'm trying to accomplish for my kid? What is my goal anyway here? And I want them to walk with Christ and I want them to have character. What's going to get those jobs done? And sometimes saying no to these extracurricular activities is the very best thing you can do for your kid.
All right. Well, that's good to know as we come into another very full school year.
Yes. Well, and busyness is not bad, and having things to do is not a bad thing. It just, I think my biggest encouragement to parents, and this is really not a day 7 thing, but it's just my encouragement to parents is, be conscious about what you're doing and be deliberate about the choices you're making. Don't let things just happen to you, and don't do it just because that's what the expectation is and everybody else is doing it. So much of our parenting just we take our cues from everybody else. And, preschool, you have to get your kids in the best preschool. And they have to do this, you do this. And then they have to do the enrichment activities and music and then sports. And it's just the expectation is just overwhelming. And so parents need to step back and say, no, whoa, wait a minute. What is my goal here? What am I trying to accomplish? I want my kids to walk with Christ. What's going to get that to happen? Lots of time with church, lots of time with me, lots of time talking about things that matter with God. So Wednesdays will be a church day and we'll do our catechesis, and Sundays, that's a church day. Does anything interfere with that? No. So that makes a bunch of choices right there. So I guess we can't do this sport because they demand Sundays. They don't get them. That's the end of it. And you tell your kid that, and then you find some other way. You go to the Y, you find something else to do. And you start making hard choices. But see, you're making choices that are going to count for eternity. And you're making choices that aren't going to limit your child, but are actually going to suit them and fit them for the kind of fulfilling life that God intended for them, which is having a vocation and having many vocations, and you're teaching them that already. It's hard to be a good parent, but it's not as difficult. The difficulty comes in the self-doubt and in the pressure you get from all the other parents who want you to do what they're doing. But I can't encourage enough for Christian parents to make choices based on what God would have them do, and don't worry about what the peer pressure is.
Yeah, because this day 7 life is something that we want for our children as well.
Amen. I definitely want it for my kids and grandkids.
Yeah.
And so I dedicated it to them. So.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Adorable.
Well, and that sort of brings me around to another way you have in the book of talking about this Sabbath-informed life, and that is the receptive life.
Yeah.
Yes.
What do you mean by that? I haven't actually gotten to that chapter in the book yet, so this is going to be all new for me.
Okay, good. Well, there was a big debate raging all through the Middle Ages about what's the best life. Is it the active life or is it the contemplative life? And so do we have the vita receptiva or the vita activa? Which one's right? Some monks thought, you contemplate, pray all day. That's the best thing to do. And that's kind of the Joseph Pieper way. Others say, no. Get out, make a difference, serve the people, get active, go plant the garden, do stuff. So it's kind of an ongoing debate. Luther comes along and instinctively might say, oh, no, it's passive. We just receive. But see, the passivity indicates kind of like a do nothing, which starts to slide into the contemplative thing. So I really suggest, even though Luther's not using this language, that I think the receptive life captures well a right understanding of how we look at things in the Lutheran lens. So we receive God's grace from him, and he fulfills all we need to have assurance of our being, our eternal life, our relationship with him. It's all given. It's all given in Christ. But then he also gives to me my vocational responsibilities, my place in life, my parents, my siblings, my peers, my country, my time in life, all those things he gives to me, and I receive those as well. So I receive from him his grace in his forgiveness, and I receive from him the grace of my vocations. And so the receptive life is learning to see all of life as gift from God. And even my busy doing in my vocations, these are vocations God has given me to do. These are God good and God pleasing. And so the receptive life is how Sabbath life plays out in a fulsome way.
That's beautiful. So the answer to should we be contemplative or active is yes.
It kind of is. And I think neither one of those is really the right answer, the best answer all by themselves. That's right.
Yes.
You need to see them both together.
Yeah. I love that paradigm. Although I will say, when I tell my children that work is a gift from God, they always want to argue with that.
Yeah. Well, we have a lot to learn as human beings because
We
our fallen nature resists God's plan for our lives. We know that as well.
Talking about all that
Tragically.
reminds me of the first article, the explanation to the first article, of all the first article gifts that God gives us. And I don't know, it's easy to overlook things as gift, but I think it's a mindset shift. It's not necessarily blocking out, Sunday as the day, but it's this mindset shift of seeing things as gift and thanking God for them and delighting in them and appreciating the beauty in life. That's, I think, a little bit easier for those of us that are wired to just naturally look at the trees and be like, look, the trees sway without falling over. I wonder how that could be, because I do that. But not everyone is wired that way. Is there, like, for people who aren't wired that way, who are just very fact-driven, practical, I put my head down and do my work every day kind of people, how can somebody start to absorb this mindset and slow down enough to actually
they need to make sure they schedule Sunday worship into their routine and Bible class, and then they need to start scheduling some time to hang out with some people and start cultivating some friendships and making that time. And so what they need to realize is they're being bad creatures when they ignore those things. And so they need to see it in the context of what it means to be the creature God created them to be. Then they'll learn to embrace those things as part of their right creatureliness. And so hanging out with people who do kind of get it is not a bad thing. The ones who will talk about, oh, look at how those branches make this kind of a shape and how interesting this is. And I'm one of those people too, who likes to see stuff in nature and just kind of enjoy it. But not everybody does. You're right. And it's always strange for me that nobody else enjoys it. But you need to be a little bit more deliberate about just kind of being tuned in to what's going on around you, this creation that God made. And I think part of it is learning to push against this total work mentality of, if it's not productive and empirically verifiably worthwhile, then it's not worth doing. That's just wrong. It's just sinful, really. It's messed up.
I had to go look up the first article of the Creed just now again and its explanation. And I will never read it the same way again. That second paragraph says, he also gives me clothing and shoes, food and drink, house and home, wife and children, land, animals, and all I have. So, for context, speaking of animals, we just got a new puppy.
Oh, no.
And let me tell you, we're learning something about work.
Amen.
But every single one of those good first article gifts also comes with a chore list.
That's right.
If I have clothes, I get to launder them. If I have shoes, I get to polish them. If I have a wife and husband and children, I get to care for them. If I have a puppy, I get to clean up after her incessantly.
No, this is right. The first article gifts always come with the reciprocal side of responsibilities to go with it. That's how it works. That's why it's the court of vocation. That's right.
But seeing them as gifts helps you also accept the chores that come with them with a sense of gratitude and delight.
That's right.
And I think that's, like I said, I will always look at that article just slightly different, thinking of it through the lens of vocation.
Amen. Amen.
Yeah, she's a lot of work.
Do you have any suggestions similar to what we were just discussing? But you said, they should go to church, go to Bible
church.
study,
Always a good, and
spend
Bible
some
study.
time with some friends. Are there any other things that you could do to help cultivate an attitude of, I don't know, being always watchful for what to be delighted by, like that there's delights out there.
Everything is delightful, Aaron.
I know, what is going to be the next one? Ready to be surprised by it.
Now that's the bad attitude. Getting a daily routine and a weekly routine that allows those opportunities is kind of important. And that takes a little, you got to kind of create this, be a little bit deliberate about it.
Make some space.
Having time for the neighborhood walk or the time to sit on the porch in the morning and drink your tea and just listen to the birds and watch the sun come up. or sometimes when I'm at the gym early in the mornings and we got windows along the wall and the sun's coming up, you just go stand and look out the window for a while, because it's just,
Oh, good. I'm not the only one that does that.
it's just like, you just got to delight sometimes. And sometimes it's so good, you just got to go out and breathe the air and look at the sun and the clouds, and it's just like too much. And so being deliberate about creating times and then giving yourself the freedom to indulge in those little promptings you get and saying, I'm going to run with that and go do that. And I'm going to go out and just kind of look at that weird flower I see blooming and try to study it a little bit. Or what is this bug? And I'm going to look it up and figure it out because this is part of God's creation. Go for it. And that's part of, I think, learning to delight in God's creation.
Yeah.
You're describing the entire camera roll on my phone right now. Just saying.
So Sarah's already an expert at this. Yeah. I have a bit of more personal question before we wrap up. So you wrote the book on Sabbath. How do you spend a typical Sunday?
Oh, that's a good question. So I get up early like I always do, and I used to get some work done before I go to church, and I'll grade a few papers or read something, then I'll off to church, stay for Bible class or teach Bible class, depending on what's going on in the congregation and where I'm serving at that point. And then my wife and I will usually make a run to store, Costco often, whatever, pick up some things we do. And then afternoon, go for a walk together or go play some pickleball together for an hour and a half of singles pickleball, which is pretty exhausting, but it's its own delight. And then kind of just take it easy. Maybe we'll go to Forest Park, take a walk around there and do that. Maybe on a good Sunday, we'll spend maybe a game night with some friends. We'll do that. So it's pretty low key, but not much TV. Don't watch much football. Don't do that much. But I wanted to work that in. You could too.
Sounds beautiful.
It works. I'm content with it.
Well, and contentment comes from this receptive life, I think, is what I'm taking away.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we need more of that for sure in our world today.
Yeah.
Here, I just thought of a question for each of us.
Oh.
So,
oh no.
For people who are listening who are like, oh, what could I need some new ideas for how I could pursue this. What is a suggestion you have for an activity that is surprisingly delightful that someone could pursue? And I have an idea, so that's why I'm going to ask you.
All right, you go first and I'll copy yours.
Here is my idea that I recommend.
Okay.
It's cool. It doesn't even take that much time and it's utterly delightful. Once a month it happens. And that is the full moon.
Yes.
Look up the time of the full moon and look at what time it rises, because it rises at a different time every month. And then do a little preparation. Find a place where you are going to be having a high view of the general eastern sky. Okay. Then you spend honestly, all you need to spend is maybe a half hour. The glory of the full moon is really only right when it's risen. Once it is above the horizon and it's rising up, it's still beautiful, but it's no longer glorious. So once a month, it's a half hour of your time. Go find yourself a place and watch the full moon rise. It's amazing.
It's
utterly delightful. You will delight in the creation of the Lord when you see it. It's fantastic.
Good suggestion. I like that one a lot.
My idea that I offer to people who are like, how could I build a practice of finding delight?
Good.
Yeah. What ideas do you guys have?
I don't know how practical this is. In my life, it generally just consists of slowing down a tad to be in the moment of what you're doing. So we were at a convention a few weeks ago and there was a gigantic bookstore there, hundreds and hundreds of books. And people were making fun of me because I was picking up, I was touching all of the covers of the books because they felt really nice. The cloth overboard covers, absolute favorite. I was just touching them.
So noticing your senses.
There you go. Yes. And I was looking at the colors and how the covers were designed. And I was just having such a good time, just looking at all the covers of the books because they were beautiful and just appreciating how they looked and how they felt. And I mean, they smelled good too. So yes, like noticing senses in particular times, that can be on walks. I know that's like a general answer, but like paying attention to the stuff that's around you and Google lensing the flowers because you're like, oh, that's weird. I wonder what that is.
Okay, you're getting too broad.
Sorry.
One idea, Sarah.
Book covers. They are left. Like go to a bookstore and you might be a little weird.
To your senses. Like what sensory input do you have at a given moment?
Yes, people might look at you weird, but it's so delightful.
Okay.
I like it.
I got one. Get to know your neighbors.
Ooh,
and by that, I mean your bird neighbors.
Oh.
I put a bird feeder next to the biggest window in my house, which is actually in my kitchen right next to my coffee pot, which is very convenient. And I will I just started feeding the birds again this fall. They're starting to come back, the chickadees, seen the cardinals there a couple of times. But I get to know them all, and I will just stand in the window with my third cup of coffee and just watch those guys. Like they just get so used to you. But they've got personalities, they've got habits. They are just the most delightful. My neighbors, the birds.
Okay. Okay, I like it.
Outstanding suggestions, guys. You guys are absolutely in tune. This is it. And see, every one of those suggestions, I would argue, is living in tune with God and creation is what leisure is all about, and is what living Day 7 Sabbath is all about. This is exactly the idea. This is very cool.
Do you have one?
Awesome.
Nice.
Do I have one? Oh,
yeah.
I would say walk with your head up and look around and let the wind hit you in the face and smell the air and notice what's on the horizon and notice what's close by. Get your head up and don't just be looking and figuring out how you get to the next place, but look around at what's going on around you while you're walking. And that's on your ordinary walks just through the neighborhood or to the car or, to the store, to across the parking lot. Look up, look around.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It's especially good if you live in a city because it's the tops of all the buildings that are the most interesting.
Yeah.
It's where all the fun stuff is.
Yep.
Okay.
Dr. Biermann, this has been so good. Thank you for joining us. It's been a
pleasure.
delightful conversation.
Well, good. That's what it's all about.
Ladies, you can find Day 7 for work, rest, or play if you haven't gotten your copy yet, which you should have for book club a couple of weeks ago. You can always find it at Concordia Publishing House, cph.org. We'll put that in the show notes. I will also put the links to our coffee hour conversations, which were nothing like this, in the show notes for the episode.
A little different tone, a little different focus. Yeah, that's okay. That's good.
That was the point.
Yeah.
We'll also put those if you want even more. We did 7 episodes, so there's like 3.5 more hours of content here if you really want to listen to more. There is more. So we'll put those links also. And Aaron's question is excellent. So if you want to answer that for us in the comments in our Facebook group or on our Instagram page at Lutheran Ladies Lounge, I would be curious to know more ideas because that's a really fun question. So join us in both of those places, our Facebook group, the Lutheran Ladies Lounge, Instagram at Lutheran Ladies Lounge. You can find all of our episodes at kfuo.org/Lutheran Ladies Lounge or on your favorite podcasting app or on the KFUO radio app. You've been listening to the Lutheran Ladies Lounge podcast. I'm Sarah.
I'm Aaron.
And I'm Rachel.
Views and opinions expressed on the Lutheran Ladies Lounge podcast may not represent the official position of the management or ownership of KFUO Radio, the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. The Lutheran Ladies Lounge is produced by KFUO Radio and available at kfuo.org or wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and leave a review for us too. If you love the Lutheran Ladies Lounge podcast, consider financially supporting our producer, KFUO Radio, so we can keep doing what we do. Find out how at kfuo.org/give.